Well, hey there everybody. I've been meaning to make this video for a couple of days, but I haven't got around to it, and I have a lot of things I want to talk about. Whoops. So where do I start? I would imagine that all of you have been affected by some way with the situation that's going on right now. And I've taken pages and pages of notes and research and ideas that I wanted to share over the last couple weeks, and I just haven't been able to do it. It seems like we're facing a situation that is so daunting that it's impossible to even talk about. And I'm not talking about the fact that there's a virus and it's too complicated to discuss. It's that there is so much division right now that is just preposterous. You can't even have a discussion without somebody attacking anybody from Fauci to Clinton to Obamagate now. It's become so absurd that I honestly don't even feel like I want to be part of this society anymore a lot of times. So I'm going to start off by saying I'm neutral on many issues. I know a lot of people are instantly going to label me regardless of what you believe. It doesn't matter. I don't give a shit. I'm not a liberal. I'm not a conservative. I'm really make my best effort to look at things independently. Utilitarian, perhaps. But I'll get into that. The things I'm going to talk about here are wide and varied, but it's more about how to handle the situation, as well as the weird dreams people have been having, the factor of how stress affects us, and then the question of what is freedom, which I'll get into in a bit. I've been having really weird dreams. I mean, I over the last 6 months I've been crazy apocalyptic dreams, and actually they started in late December and January before this really hit America, and subconsciously I have no idea where I was coming from, but there were worldwide fires and apocalypses, nuclear war, all these different strange, floods, tidal waves, these kinds of things. But, all the way up to last night, where I had this dream that I was stuck all of a sudden in this Mexican prison. I would say it was all I know is that it was a South American prison somewhere where they put gangsters and hardcore, cartel members, and then they just let them do what they wanted. So you would see it as one of those islands where criminals can just run free. They had guns, everything was, there was no, oversight. I haven't thought about that dream yet. I haven't really tried to process it, but I really do believe in the metaphors in these things. And I think that dream, now that I talk about it out loud, I realize that's how I feel like I am in fucking society right now. That everybody's just running around, doesn't give a shit, there's no order, nobody cares about any type of reality or anything that we've learned as humans. Science is being thrown out the window as it has for a long time. People want to fight amongst each other. They want to talk about you're a cuck, you're a libtard, or the other side is you're a racist, you're a Nazi. It's preposterous. And I honestly, it's hard to even talk about, but it was already bad before this started. And now, when this happened, all of a sudden the stress levels are off the charts. People are just going out and attacking one another over the stupidest shit. And I'm not talking about what the media puts the highlights on. I'm talking about my own experiences with talking with people. People are so wrapped up with whatever they consider to be the important news. I have friends who even believe in some of the, let's say, the right-wing fringe things. I had a friend tell me the other day, and I love you, bro, but he said the Michael Flynn story might be the biggest story of our time. And I just facepalmed, thinking, the biggest story of our time, here we are amidst a pandemic we haven't seen in 100 years, and people have been convinced that Michael Flynn is going to be the big story. Well, I hate to break it to you, but the big story is the way that society is dividing over what media we're willing to watch. And there is a lot of anger out there right now. And this has been multiplied, and multiplied tenfold by what's going on with people not being able to go to work, people losing their jobs. as well as people getting sick and dying and others not caring. So there's one half of people who really think that they're really taking this seriously and saying, well, we're going to do our best to get back to work, but we have to be careful. And then there's the people in the middle who say, I'm not sure. And then the others on the extreme side who say, I don't give a shit if I get you sick. I don't care. That's life. That's just how it is. If you get sick, oh well, everybody dies. And I think it's interesting that people say that. And honestly, a lot of these people are the same ones who are the anti-abortion protesters who talk about how women shouldn't have rights, to terminate an early pregnancy that might not even be healthy just because they want to protect life. And all of a sudden they're not protecting life. Now, instantly I get right off track and I get into the pro-life thing, but it's an issue. It is a serious issue. We are only civilized as a society until the shit really hits the fan, okay? That's the point I'm getting to. Everybody acts like they can get along until something bad happens. And in order to cope with that, you have to be a very well-rounded individual. And I'm going to get to that in the second half of the video. For the first half, I want to ask the question here, which is, what is freedom? I've been watching some shit unfold that is absolutely hilarious to me. Not hilarious in the sense of ha-ha funny, but hilarious in the sense of the extreme irony of, well, I'll get to that. Let's just say dancing was once illegal, okay? There have been times in history where you couldn't go out and dance. And when we look back at that, we think that is ridiculous. But the Puritans really believed that dancing was going to cause you to go out and fuck everybody and do drugs and just get wasted. Maybe in some cases. But is that your freedom to dance? Of course. There was a time when they tried to ban cannabis, and that worked for a very long time. But is it your freedom to consume an herb? Of course it is. But the people from the right would honestly look at that and say, well, no, that's a drug, it's bad, you shouldn't be able to do that. They tried the same thing with alcohol, and as it turned out, everybody drank alcohol. So it wasn't a big deal. You can't stop that. The cartels have too much power, the mob has too much power. So that one was kind of revoked, right? And eventually cannabis was in the States too. And believe me, I'm getting to a point here. I want to talk about really what we consider to be freedom. There have been plenty of places and times through history in this country where we did not allow interracial or intersex relationships, where you couldn't even walk down the street with somebody of the other sex or the other color. And now we have that freedom, but there are people still trying to stop that freedom. People who don't believe in gay rights or gay marriage. I'm not gay, but do I think other people should have that freedom? Of course, that's America. How could you not think that? Well, it comes down to, I'll get to the values issue, but like I said before, abortion rights. Then there's the issue of working on the Sabbath. And there were times within the last couple centuries where people would be punished for working on Saturday or Sunday, depending on which denomination you belong to. There are places like Idaho where I went to work when I was younger. Took the Greyhound out there to work at Sun Valley Ski Resort and realized that they literally lock up with chains the alcohol on Sunday. And I asked why. Oh, well, it's a dry state on Sunday. But interesting. I didn't understand that at the time. I was young. But, well, so there are a lot of Christians there that tell others they can't drink alcohol because it's Sunday, but the rest of the week they can. And these are the things, when I talk about freedom, that people seem to overlook. Teaching controversial things in school has become, banned in some areas, and that could go either way, whether it's evolution or Christianity. Believing in another God has been illegal in a lot of places. Banned books. We all know about book burnings. We all know about Alexandria, the library that was burned because people were afraid of that knowledge, that it didn't agree with what they believed. And I know Alexandria has nothing to do with America, but the book burnings have been a popular theme within America for quite some time, up until at least the 60s. So, all of it is moral virtue signaling. And it's coming from the extreme right. And those are the same people who say that the left are the ones who are virtue signaling. And that makes you wonder what kind of a projection or, an insecurity do people have to project their own shortcomings and to literally spell out their own ignorance onto others. Now, I'm saying that, psychedelics are a great example as well. The way that they were taken away because they disagreed with what your beliefs were. And they threw all this. Basically, anybody who people want to think is a demon is just thrown under the bus. The media has not made this any easier. And, in fact, it's extremely saddening what the media has done to reality. But that's for another time. But here's the thing I wanted to get to. When we talk about all these freedoms, I want to ask something. What is the freedom that we have in this country to congregate and to protest our grievances? Now, the example I'm going to give is all the protests in Michigan and elsewhere against the stay-at-home orders. Now, before you think that I'm one of those people who sits at home and says, oh, I'm going to do what the government tells me, you should know that's bullshit, because I've been camping, I've been traveling, I've uploaded a couple of videos of my camping trips. I've been harassed by even my own brother, like, well, we're not supposed to go camping. And I said, well, I don't care. I'm an adult. I can make those decisions. But that said, I respect and admire the fact that people want to stand up for their rights to go to work. This is a free country. And if people want to start up their businesses and people want to visit those businesses, that's fine. We have the knowledge we need. It is what it is. We're not going to be able to sit at home all day long. But that said, it's very interesting that people are walking around on the Capitol grounds carrying AK-47s or AR-15s, wearing full vest armor and clips and camo, fatigues. These guys look like something straight out of a bullshit fucking book about, sorry, don't want to be offensive here. I believe in the Second Amendment, but I also believe in the First Amendment. And if you want to stand out there with your gun and protest, I think that's fine. But why is it that the freedom to assemble can be approved and accepted by people like me if, even though I don't agree with your reasoning, I agree with your right to assemble? If you look back, you'll realize that within the last 2 years, all of a sudden the liberals have been the enemies for protesting. Protesting police brutality, protesting climate, whatever it might be. It's not just that a lot of people on the right have harassed liberals for this. It's that they literally tried to pass legislation over the last 2 years, and you can look into it. They tried to pass anti-protest legislation because they said, and I remember this in Portland, they said, these guys are blocking progress, blocking the street, they're blocking business. But it was more like they shouldn't be able to say these things. They shouldn't be able to complain against their government. And I've heard this from a lot of people on the right. They say, if you don't like the way your government does business, then leave the country. You don't know how many times I've heard this shit. Or, why are you living here if you don't agree with the policies? I thought, what did your parents teach you about living in a world with other people? You can't just say, I disagree with you, move out of my country. It doesn't work that way. For the longest time, we were able to overcome our obstacles and our disagreements by discussion. But this is long since gone. So the anti-protest legislation that was tried to be passed, it seems like that protesting is okay, it's just not for liberals. And as I said in the beginning, I'm not one of those people who protests in the street for every little thing that happens. I'm not a liberal, I'm not a conservative. I want to see people getting along and understanding and agreeing on certain concepts, and I think that's totally dead. I believe that we're hitting a point now where there's no real way out of this. And I'm not saying that it's going to end in total chaos or anything like that, but that people just cannot seem to have a civil conversation anymore. Now, a lot of my subscribers do. I have some people who actually think totally different than me, and I love having those discussions. I text back and forth with my friend all the time, who is one of those folks who repeats everything that Fox News says. Do I believe he watches Fox News? No. But these are talking points from the mainstream media that are being repeated. And the irony about that is that I've had so many people, when I have an opinion, accuse me of being oh, mainstream media, you believe in MSM, mainstream media, mainstream media. And I think, you know what? Who is the most popular news outlet in the country? Fox News. Fox News is the ultimate right-wing channel. Extremely biased. We all know it. Even though I can admit to people that CNN, NBC, ABC, they're all biased, even the people who have an alternate opinion cannot admit that Fox News is biased. They think it's all facts. And you've bought into the biggest bullshit lie in history, that any of those mainstream media want anything more than ad revenue. They will say anything. It's all opinionals. Journalism is dead, people. So if you want to know what's going on in the world, you have to pay attention to many different angles, not just watch the news. It doesn't matter what news you watch. It's not good enough if it's just one news. And I'm not one of those people also that says, oh, all these conservatives should give back their socialism checks that they got from the government. No, if the government's going to say we should shut down our business, if they're going to tell us we can't work, you're damn right they owe us money. And I believe we should get everything we can while we can, because the inflation rates from this are just going to go through the roof. But these are checks for working people. One of the weird thing is that people who aren't even working are getting checks. I mean, people who are working and working even overtime are still getting these stimulus checks. People who have jobs still are getting these stimulus checks. It's something I don't understand. And I also don't understand why these corporations can get these bailouts of millions of dollars and these loans for, when they have an endowment, like some of these companies had to give back money, like the college, like Stanford, I think. They wanted a $20 million loan. They have a $90 billion endowment. I mean, that's 5,000 times more than they borrowed. It's just everybody's greedy. Everybody wants these, the corporations are greedy, and the average person gets fucked over. That's you and me. Whether you're a Republican or Democrat, it doesn't matter. If people would stop talking about Obamagate and Hillary and all this stupid shit from the past, we could move forward. It's all a distraction. If you don't see it, then you're completely got the wool pulled over your eyes. Nobody's going to go to jail for Obamagate. This isn't even a thing. And even when the president was asked about it, and he's like, oh, well, it's Obamagate. It is what it is, right? So, sorry to get frustrated. Not frustrated. I'm not actually angry inside or anything. I just am expressing how I feel about these things. There's this idea that you should obey the law at all times, right? This is something that a lot of people have said. When I look at the way that people are attacked, when they say, oh, they were shot by police, for example, and they weren't doing anything, and people say, well, they shouldn't have been running, or they shouldn't have been doing this. It seems that people are always willing to say, obey the law and obey the police. But the sheriffs don't have to do it. If you don't know about these sheriffs organizations, they really believe they're above the law. And a lot of sheriffs had said, well, I refuse to enforce any governor's law. And I think, well, a lot of people say, right on, good for my sheriff. But I say, you know what? You, by law, under the Constitution, actually are not in charge. That's not how that works. And by changing the law just because you want to be a tough guy, it doesn't change the fact that if you want to believe in the Constitution and you want to support the First and Second Amendment, and you have to support all of it. You can't just pick and choose. People do the same thing with religion. They pick and choose which parts of the Bible they want to believe and the rest of it they ignore. It's not appropriate, It's all or none, right? And I guess what I'm getting at is that there are no papers or particular ways that we have to live as humans. We're trying our best to hang on to what we have, which is a way outdated constitution, which actually is surprisingly efficient for what it is. But I'm not saying it should be changed. I'm saying it's the only thing that's giving us any type of freedom still. Because if the people in charge, the real elite, had their hands on these things and were able to, they would change the Constitution completely to where you didn't have freedom to assemble. They just renewed the Patriot Act from 2001, which basically takes away your rights to privacy in your own country. And yet you're complaining about each other. It's like, it's very frustrating. But that's why I make these videos, so I can just kind of get it out. don't think that I sit around complaining about politics all the time. I've been doing a lot of gardening and doing other things. It's not like I sit and focus on this all day. I've kind of I know the system is corrupt. I always have, and I'm not surprised. So, our freedom is at stake on this, but also our reason. When people talk about the deep state, they talk about how Trump's going to expose the deep state. It's deeper than it's ever been. Steven Mnuchin, I mean, look at the people who are in office. And I realize after a few years of this that most folks don't really do any research whatsoever. They listen to Breitbart or something else. And the way I know this is because I watch Breitbart and Fox News and CNN and ABC once in a while. I wouldn't say I watch them, but rather I read the headlines. That's all I really need, is to read the headlines to say, oh, wow, this is what they think is important, right? And if you do that long enough, if you're willing to get outside of your echo chamber, where you watch the same thing every day, you can say, wow, this is what they think is important, and this is what they think is important. And you see how many distractions there are on both sides. It's absurd. It's absolutely absurd. But the deep state, if you want to call it that, is deeper than it's ever been. And it is all right in the administration right now in the White House. All of them. Every single one of them has vested interests in their own businesses and themselves. And to think that this is somehow a, TDS or Trump derangement syndrome or orange man bad, that's a complete bullshit fallacy. That's your way of saying, if you disagree with anything my boss says, then you must be one of the enemies that loves Hillary. I mean, I've heard this too many times. Complete bullshit. We all got screwed on the last election, okay? I can admit that Hillary is not a good candidate, and she's a shitty person, and I don't like her. But does that mean that we need to focus on that all the time? And the reason I'm talking about this is because it's so absurd how many people bring up Hillary Clinton in the comment sections on YouTube. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Get over it, people. Get over Hillary Clinton. Get over Obama. He's out of office. We have a current issue right now to deal with. So, yeah. We want to focus on immigrants being the problem, so be it. Then we get into an issue where all of a sudden we want them back to work in the fields because we don't have enough food in the supermarkets or something. You can't win with people because they're not very educated. And that goes for all sides. We are completely falling behind in education in the world. You can't just learn some basic math and some science anymore and be good to go. You have to be paying attention to what's going on in the world. There are daily, new discoveries and updates on things that we thought were true. And for most people, they can't keep up with it all. But for some people, they don't want to keep up with any of it. They want to believe what they believed back in 1970 or 1990 or whatever it might be. And so they believe in this thing called the free market. And if you don't understand that the free market is really a government program, then you're missing out on one of the most important realizations, that basically the free market is a way to roll over you as an individual so corporations can make more money. They just lobby and lobby and lobby to get laws passed on their behalf. And that's just the way it is. So hopefully I got across all the points I wanted to. I have a strong distrust in government. It doesn't matter what administration it is, I would never say, oh, this person's my hero. They're presidents. They got there because they had to cut throats. That's the way it works. And so it seems like people can distrust in government unless they want to trust in government. And so many people trust Trump. It's absolutely absurd. I don't know why. I can't understand it. I can't comprehend why they believe he has their best interest at heart. But more than that, looking at him from a person who considers myself somewhat intelligent, I realize the guy is a complete moron. He has a basic grasp on some things, but doesn't do any research. Anybody who can tweet 50 times in one day and watch Fox News all morning is obviously a very misinformed person who doesn't take the time to educate themselves. Business people don't do that, Businessmen don't go out and learn about the world. Unless you're, unless you spend the time and actually do. I'm not saying all rich people or all businessmen don't. I'm just saying that the people who want to be the power hungry, the people who want to be in charge, the people who really work hard to tell you what to do, those are the ones who you have to watch out for. So it's always a they. There's always some they group that's out to get us. And the division among people is just absolutely absurd right now. And if you believe any of the media, you're just supporting buying ads. That's all it is. It's all about ad revenue. That goes for Fox, CNN, all of them. I mean, I haven't had cable in years, but I can't believe that people still watch that shit. It's toxic. It's extremely toxic. I cringe because I tend to be more liberal-minded, but when I see the kind of things the liberal media says, I'm just like, wow, you guys are desperate. You're clinging to the bullshit like everybody else, and it's pretty pathetic. So, anyway, that's my rant. I would just say this, that, you know, whether you're a conservative, a liberal, left, right, up, down, back and forth, all that matters is, would you take care of another human being if they needed your help? And that's a hard one for people. I don't know. It seems like people just don't give a shit about each other. And I could go on and on and on, but I'm not going to. I've rambled long enough. I had a few other thoughts. I'd just like to say this, you know, never ever trust the people in power to do the right thing. They don't. They never do. Even those you think that are going to help you out and really save the day, you know, the supermen of the world, the superwomen of the world, it doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. So you have to ask yourself a question. What do you want out of your future? What is freedom? What is equality? What does it mean to be a citizen? How can we fight with half our country and say everybody should just leave if we disagree with them? Just remember that power, you know, power corrupts absolutely. It's one of those well-known things. When people have too much power, they tend to abuse others. And the USA needs to be a little more independent. And then I think we wouldn't be blaming other countries for our problems. You know, there's always a scapegoat. It's one of the most frustrating things. Just remember that the government's supposed to work for you. They're not in charge of you. They don't tell you what to do. You have to have a brain of your own to be able to tell them what you want them to do. So to sit back and be a lazy American in your recliner and watch fucking Netflix all day and never do any education or research on what's going on in the world, you're not a citizen. You're just a dude sitting in a chair. You've got to actually dig deep. And, you know, if you don't see what's going on around you, it's... While everybody's complaining about welfare, it's really just welfare for the rich. It always has been. That's what Congress does. That's what lobbyists do. That's why we're bailing out the airline industry like Boeing that was already failing. That's why we're bailing out probably the cruise lines in the long run. And we think, you know, it's funny because 2/3 of people think that this is a moment of change where we should change our ways. Yet, is anybody really acting on that? No, we just want to get back to our normal way of wasting money and resources and living our lives. So this turned into a kind of a negative fucking video in a way, but I don't know. It is what it is. I had to get all this shit out, talk about it. Hopefully it's not too confrontational. There's a lot of things that I wanted to bring up into this about surveillance state and how complacent we are and willing to accept the bullshit that's sent our way. But I'm not going to because it would take too long. So I'd just like to say that this was not a liberal rant, obviously, not a conservative rant. This was a rant from a person who is just sick and tired of the division over the stupidest things, like Hillary Clinton or Barack Obama, or whether or not you believe that vaccines are good or bad. I'm just done with it. I guess in essence, this whole situation has brought me to the reality and the realization that Americans aren't really smart enough as a whole to know what they want or what they need. So it's kind of comforting because I can opt out of politics for a while. opt out of voting for presidents when there's no point anyway. But I'll talk to y'all next time. Thanks for listening to my rant. Peace.